optimization forward. And what I'm looking for is at any point in that 20-year period, does what I'm doing break down? Because if you've got something that is a curve fit, something that really is not that robust, you want it to break down during your back test and not during live money. So basically, you're breaking it up into in-sample and out-of-sample data.
All right, so now a quick reiteration on adaptive optimizer concepts, because we're not going to go that deep into them, because really the adaptive optimizer concepts, you can go back to your page on forward-looking due diligence, and we were all over on those second 4 rules of basically the adaptive optimizer concepts, which I know Dean does for the network, but you were one of the you helped originally initiate that, Matt, because I remember years ago you were at an ETF or some kind of conference like that, and you were sitting with a lot of tactical managers. And tell them about that conversation, if you remember that brought up the need for adaptive optimizer concepts.
So
you have no.
Wait, somebody needs to be muted here. Craig, wake up and smack someone in the head. All right, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. So I mean, I was at a conference with a bunch of tactical managers, and one of the big things that kept coming up over and over and over again was, we got all these different managers in the room. We all follow different strategies. Everybody knows how to combine growth, value, small cap, mid cap, international. But how do you combine partially tactical with fully tactical? How do you combine, a guy that's using a momentum methodology with a guy who's using a counter trend methodology? So that's what a lot of the discussion was. I mean, basically, we're all sitting here saying, hey, we're not going to get all of the money, and we'll be better off if we can figure out, how do people combine guys like us? And so, that's where a lot of this kind of came from.
Yeah, you don't ever want to lay down a challenge that's in Matt's field in front of him and not expect something to not happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is, because that was years ago. I remember we were talking after you came back. You said, I was sitting around with all these managers, and we all just realized there's no way to combine all of us. So I started thinking of some ways. But that also helped grow the whole aspect of trend aggregation. These things where it was like multiple disciplines coming together at once. So the adaptive optimizer concepts are the second 4 concepts: performance versus expectations, portfolio optimization, scenario analysis, failure mode, and effect analysis that all come into place after we did the reverse engineering on all the different managers of whether they even get in the equation or not. So I'm going to open up for questions now. I will say we'll take this day as being officially over right now. If you have to go, go ahead. We'll open up for any questions. Tomorrow we'll resume on the second part of this class that goes into tactical mindset, which is a phenomenal dissertation, we'll say, on how to live successfully this day and age. We've got questions for Matt here. Anything goes, sort of, unless it becomes a wholesaling question that you don't want to deal with. If none, we can just call it a day now. But
I think I got a quickie.
Wait, go ahead. Someone else who said, I think I got a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. This is Ken. When you're looking at intraday or 30-minute intervals, is there a risk that you get myopic? That your focus is so much on the tree you miss the forest?
That's a good question in terms of, now we'll go into intraday stuff tomorrow, but that's relevant for right now, Matt. I like that question. So go ahead.
So not really. So, I mean, what we're doing is, so let's say I've got Apple And so for Apple, I'm going to have 3 models. So I may have a daily model for Apple. I may have a 30-minute model for Apple, and then I may have a 300-minute model for Apple. Basically, what I want to do there is I want one model that's really moving on a dime, that can move every half an hour if necessary. I want another model that's maybe a little bit more long-term. By long-term, I mean moves on a daily basis, so it doesn't get caught up in the clutter of what's going on intraday. And then I want another model that's kind of in between. So like 300 minutes is, something that can move towards later in the day. And then I'm also combining different types. So there may be counter trend, there may be momentum, there may be pattern recognition, there may be intermarket. So what we want to do is we want to cover kind of every scenario for a stock. We want to have something that moves real quick, something that's a little bit slower, something that's kind of in the middle, and then all different types of ways of analyzing the stock so that, if they all agree, then we've got a full position in the stock. If, 1 says buy and 2 say sell, then we got a 1% position, so on and so forth. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Dan, did it?
Matt?
I mean, Apple, I think, is a good example because Apple has been on, a 20-year uptrend.
Right. Which is why you also
which is the forest.
Forward-looking. What's that?
Hang on, Ken. Did that answer your question?
No, it did not.
Okay,
Apple's on,
so let me.
Apple's a 20-year uptrend.
I'm not talking about Apple, but when I'm talking about your question about becoming myopic on something, the reason I thought that was a really good question is because each one of you has to ask that about yourselves too. And that is going to be, the answer to that will often lie in what's your strength and style too. Obviously, Tuttle keeps himself out of harm's way with that, because that was a good answer to that question as per what he's doing. But each one of you, Ken, you opened up Pandora's box for everybody there, because each one of you has to ask yourself that for anything you're doing. So that's why I like the question. All right, somebody else had a question too.
Question, yeah, Matt, do you use anything like Guppy? You familiar with Guppy?
I am not familiar with Guppy.
Okay, because it's very similar.
It's
simply is. Yeah, no, it's similar to what you're trying to do, but not quite as short a time frame. It just has like 10 different, exponential running averages, and it has it on a more or less like a scale, and you can watch the movement of the various moving averages and whether they cross and do things like that, and it'll give you a very good prediction about that. Just thought you might have used that, but
no, we don't.
We don't do different time frame.
We don't do anything with moving averages.
It's for individual stocks. Okay.
No, I understand. We don't do and there are reasons why. It's just I'm not a huge fan of moving averages. The only place we use moving averages is when we're looking at intermarket divergences. We'll put a moving average on the intermarket. So in my Apple and tech stock example, it won't be hey, well, we had one day where Apple was down and tech stocks were up, that's bullish. We'll take a moving average of Apple's stock price and a moving average of tech stocks to smooth it out, and that's a better way to do intermarket divergences. But we won't use moving average crossovers to actually individually buy stocks or anything. The models that we have are better than kind of the traditional moving average crossover stuff. We used to use it way back in the day, but we've kind of evolved beyond that.
What I can tell you is whoever asked the Guppy question there is that's a good example of how things evolve in a network for people that are in the leadership circles here. Is it because the network is just a gigantic brainstorming place, and that's what I say. If you're in leadership, you better have thick skin and a thin skull, because we want, no matter what you stand for, we're going to tear you to shreds. And leaders, true leaders, really like that, because they know that you may come up with something we missed before. And man, I can tell you from, just I'll stay specific just on Tuttle right now because we've had him in for, his knowledge on tactical and stuff here. But the minute he sees something better, he goes after it, in all the tests and different things like that. And if it proves itself out better, he will drop anything. Matt is not loyal to anything but what's better. But it takes a lot to sit through some things and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, it's your guy from Ann Arbor, so I'm always looking to improve. Highland.
Okay.
Ask that,
Matt?
of course. All right. Thanks.
Matt.
Well, if you're looking to improve, why are you still living in Ann Arbor, you fucking Packers fan? Okay, next question.
Wait. Now, Ann Arbor,
Packers.
Ann Arbor.
Got 'em. Matt?
Well, I thought everybody around there loves the Packers, don't they?
Packers. No,
I know.
love
Go
the Seahawks
Blue.
and
Oh, wait a minute.
Lions
Am I
of
missing
England.
something?
No, Ann Arbor.
You're
All right,
talking about the Detroit.
Whatever. Okay. All right, whatever. Forget it.
Oh,
I'm wrong.
I like
All right,
winning. I
let's
like
move
winning
on.
teams.
Okay.
I have a question regarding
Yeah.
when it comes to.
Hey, by the way, speaking of, wait, I got to just tell you this. This is not important, but Matt uses forward-looking due diligence, and he also likes winning teams. And how many years have you been killing it in your fantasy football, Matt?
Four years in a row. I mean, I don't win.
Yeah,
I'm in the Super Bowl every year. I'm like I don't win it every year, but I'm in it every year. The only thing that gets me is injuries every once in a while.
So, all right, go ahead. Someone else was going to ask a question.
Yeah, Matt. With
I had
the
a
seven,
question.
Go ahead,
seven
whoever
different
started.
standard deviation, MAR ratio, Sharp ratio, volatility, drawdown, returns, and beta. Now you're looking at those for each of the strategies, and then also combining it with how the different strategies would mesh together. Correct?
Actually, if we get into what we're supposed to tomorrow, we get into all those elements. But Matt, you can give an overview answer because it's pretty much, I think, no, right?
Well, no. I mean, the biggest thing I look at is MAR ratio, and so what I'll do, and again, let's use. I mean, we don't own Apple, but I'll use Apple as an example. So let's say I've got my 3 models for Apple. So I first start off, with the art piece, where it's like, all right, what type of models do I want to develop for Apple? And so let's say we develop 6 different models for Apple, different time frames, different types of models. Then, and also I want to make sure that, at least on the art part, that they're going to be models that I know aren't going to be correlated with each other on an underwater basis, but can go up at the same time. Then I do the science part where we throw the monthly return streams of all my Apple models together, and I look and see which combination, so I'm looking for 3, which combination of 3 give me the best MAR ratio, which, basically is which combination of 3 gives me, the lowest drawdown typically, while still returning as much as the other combination. So, then I do it on Apple. Then I do it on a portfolio basis. So I'm throwing the Apple models in with, the Netflix, the Facebook, the Coca-Cola, all that stuff. And again, I'm looking at MAR ratio. So really, of all those things, MAR ratio is really the only thing that I'm looking at.
Well, we have found in our experience has been, alpha, beta, standard deviation, the different things you're talking about. Where they come into play is when you're kind of doing what everybody else does, So it's almost like that. Look, if you're doing what everybody else does, then maybe expenses and or those things is your only way you can differentiate a little. But it's not. But it stands in the way. Those sort of like focusing on those measurement tools, it stands in the way of what we always consider what the biggest risk is, what we talked to you guys about yesterday, is failure to accomplish anything significant with money. So they're not bad things, but they just don't make the, they're real impressive for clients to hear you talk about or something like that, and cool to talk about at a cocktail party. But the reality is there's a reason why we don't pay much attention to that. All right, next question.
I have a question regarding some of the more sophisticated fixed income returns. If you're doing due diligence backward or forward, like structured products or fixed to float stuff, do you incorporate that, or how do you kind of backtrack some of those?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of structured products. We do have, models that we run on fixed income ETFs, so treasuries, inverse treasuries, convertibles, high yield, all that stuff, and we follow the same process we would always follow.
Yeah, you're almost getting into
Right,
kind of an individualized. We're kind of teetering on a wholesaling question there. It's not a bad question, but that would get into something.
Well, yeah, I think the return
on the
attribution
last
is
day.
different.
Right, but it also would get everything. That would be more relevant on the last day when we get into TAMPs and different products and things like that, and that's not going to involve Matt. And involve the people who are overseeing TAMPs. But yeah, I'm fine for you asking Matt, but just because he doesn't believe in structured products doesn't mean we don't have any. Okay, so.
Right, it's an alternative, I think, investment class or so.
All right, other questions? All right, so it's good 2.5 hours for the day. Why don't we shut it down? I'll pick it up tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern. Again, Matt, thank you so much. And we get into some, we start off with you developing your own agile, no sunk cost mentality. A lot of methodology, not just, we talked enough about why you should do it. Tomorrow we're going to talk about actually how to do it. All right, and then we're getting into model building and a lot of other. We're going to go even deeper on the technical side tomorrow. All right, thank you all, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks all.
Thank you, Matt and Ron. Have a good night.
you.